All right, welcome back, everyone. Welcome from lunch. This is a really fun way to kick off the afternoon. We're going to be doing some effective practice presentations followed by the awards. And so I get to present this showcase to you every year, and it's one of the highlights, I think, of the work I get to do. So without too much ado, I want to give you a little overview of the actual program so that you have a sense of it if you hadn't heard of it before. And I have to pull these bad boys out to tell you a couple things here. So the SUNY Effective Online Practices Award Program, what the whole intent here is to collect and share and showcase all of the online best practices and strategies and programs across our SUNY system. Every year we put the call out and we collect effective practices, and we've been doing this. I think we're in round 9 now. So I think this is our 9th year. Oh, yeah, I just read my slide. It's right there. So this year we have 7 entries, and you can see our different tracks where these fall into. Originally, this started as an online teaching and learning award. And then over the years with different initiatives, we've been able to branch this out and include many other tracks: course quality, student supports, and so forth. So these awards are conferred annually at the summit, and we have the opportunity to put these out to our community of practice to peer review and rate them. And in fact, that's how the awards are determined. It is by peer review. So the practices with the most votes are the ones that most votes and total score. And I'll explain how that's rated later on. Those are the ones that are awarded. All right. So what we're going to do is we are going to take some time to turn it over to those folks who have submitted this year. And this is the first time I've had every single person who submitted an entry be available to share. So I'm really excited that all 7 entries are here today in one form or another. And we have 6 of them online and 1 in the room. So we are going to get started with, this is from the University at Buffalo, Steve Sturman and his team. I believe he is maybe joined by others today. They submitted Making It Real, Integrating Immersive VR Across the University at Buffalo, Doctorate of Social Work Program. So I'm going to leave this here. Michaela, do I need to stop sharing for Steve?
Yes, you will.
Okay. Thank you. So Steve, thanks for being with us. We really appreciate it.
Great, thank you. I'm happy to be here. So very quickly, we have 6 to 8 minutes. So I'm going to jump right through this. At UB, we launched a new fully online doctorate in social work program approximately 4 years ago. And in that program, what we wanted to do was introduce immersive VR to our students. And the reason we wanted to do that is because virtual reality really aligned well with our program goals. This is a doctorate level program, so we really wanted our students to become thought leaders about how emerging technologies could be used effectively in social work practice. And the other goal of the program is to get them to start thinking about implementation science. And what that revolves around is how to take new interventions and integrate them into social work practice to help the client populations they're working with. So we thought VR would be a great tool for doing this. So we focused upon the Oculus or the Meta Quest platform, and we have all our students purchase those and get to know how to use them in social work. But since this is an online program, they're all remote. So one of our challenges was getting them up to speed on what VR is and how to use it effectively. So yes, was there a question? So our online program, the way we chose to do this was we started with a pre-orientation website. So before they actually connect with their classes, we have an orientation that they attend remotely. And we have a pre-orientation website where we provide them with an introduction to the program. So with this, what we wanted to do was give them some motivation. Why are we using VR in the doctorate program? And for this, we kind of showed them how VR is being used now in health-related professions. This way they can tie that to their professional development goals. Then we also had them think about a learning plan. How am I going to take this new technology I may have never used before and learn to use it effectively? So with the pre-orientation program, we had them think about how they might have learned new technologies in the past and things like how much time they needed, what types of resources, that type of thing. And then think about how that might apply to their learning VR. And then we gave them some helpful instructions on how to develop a plan for themselves for VR. So we told them, it's going to take you an hour to set up your device, an hour to go through the tutorials, and then you're going to want to spend 3 to 5 hours just exploring some of the apps there so that you can become familiar with it. So giving them some tips on how to set up their time so that they can become comfortable with using the VR. We pointed them to tech support on how to set up their headsets, some built-in tutorials in the VR headsets so that they could get comfortable using the VR. And then I also provided support if they ran into problems and questions. And then so that we had them do that all before our 2-day synchronous orientation program. And so the hope is to get them up to speed, comfortable with VR before that. And then during the 2-day orientation program, right before classes start, we actually met with them for an hour in a VR session, in a VR classroom, so that they could get to know each other in that space, experiment with the technology, and see how that was going to work for them. A very low stakes way for them to learn the technology, but get comfortable enough with it so when they had to use it in their classes, they would have that familiarity. So after the orientation, the first year semester they take is integration into the doctoral seminar on trauma and human rights. So this trauma and human rights course is where we have most of our exercises in VR that help scale them up to speed on how to use VR. So we started with demonstrating how VR can be used in social work practice, trying to get them to start thinking critically about whether VR would be appropriate for the areas they're practicing in. And we start with a basic exercise. Social work is a very stressful profession. So we really wanted them to think about how they might use VR for their own self-care. So we had them pick an app. Maybe some of them chose meditation apps, others games, some social interaction, like virtual karaoke. And they were supposed to go in, experience those apps, and then reflect upon that and reflect upon how that might be useful for their own self-care or self-care for the other people that they work with in their agencies. And they shared those discussions with each other so they can get a broader understanding of what types of apps are out there. After that, we also had a virtual class session in the headset so that they could see what that's like. And they could see how different training options might be available for their agencies or organizations they're working with. And one of the other cool things that we developed, we created a trauma-informed waiting room for to actually teach them about trauma-informed care. So they were able to go into this 3D environment, walk around, explore it, and see how VR could be used in learning or training for their agencies. So we do that all through the first semester. And then across the other 3 years, in the other 2.5 years in the program, we have them do other types of VR activities so that they can make more connections. For instance, in our implementation science course, in our evidence-based practice courses, they look at research on how VR is being used in treatments in different health-related professions. In our using professional collaboration networks, they come back to the simulation on trauma-informed care, and this time they look at it as a teaching or implementation model and think about how they might use something like that within their agencies to train their staffs on other topics and how they might design that on their own. And then they have the option also to take teaching and pedagogy. And in that course, we have a whole section on how to teach with immersive VR, how to develop experiential or situational learning experiences in VR for their students. And then as part of this program, they also need to do a capstone project. And we strongly encourage them to consider how they might take an intervention that's now done in the real world and maybe change that so that it's VR capable, or how they might create an entirely new intervention that they could do through VR. So that is what we've been doing, and how we've actually developed the curriculum throughout the 3-year program to help them think critically about VR and use that in their professional development and later on in their practice.
Thank you, Steve. We probably could take a question. I know for all the presenters, I gave them a time limit, so we'll probably want to like pick one question for each, but John can check the chat. Is there anything for Steve?
There is no questions in the chat for Steve so far.
Okay. How are we in the room? Okay. Thank you, Steve. I think we'll move on to our next one. And I'm not going to go back and forth between my slides each time. I will just read the next one for you. And we have Alireza Ibrahimi from Old Westbury. And the submission was enhancing the quality of hybrid and online courses by enforcing and motivating techniques and tools for maximum engagement and discussions. I see some slides being pulled up. Perfect. We can see it just fine. We can't hear though if the presenter.
Beautiful. Let me just, all right. Good afternoon, everyone. And I'm so happy to be part of this event. And I wish I could be present there. And now I'm doing it virtually. So basically, I would like to talk about how to enhance online teaching or even hybrid teaching using techniques and tools to maximize the engagement of a student. As we know, when we go from the face-to-face presentation, we go to the online, we lose some of the quality of the interaction. So for that, I would like to bring some of the tools that I use, some of the technique that I use. Here I'm going to basically just want to see if I can go back to my PowerPoint. Discussion is central to hybrid and online. That's, I could say, the only ways that we can really interact with our learner, and as an educator also interact with them. And therefore, we need to somehow prioritize and use some enforcing and motivating techniques to engage a student. So as we know, we are also using this learning management system that has its own challenges and also its own ways so we can communicate. And learning that as well is become a very good way to be effective, as this summit is also about effective practices. Right now, most of us move from Blackboard, previously Angel, and now with Brightspace, that we have a little challenges, but there is always features that we can learn. So in online discussion, I would found that in direct feedback, it would be a very good way to engage students so they can be without feeling that they are judged or evaluated all the time. They get engaged and also post more and have some quality values. And obviously, continuous improvement is a way to look at these techniques that we use, whether it's methods, enforcement, motivation. I've been teaching quite years at Old Westbury, and it was because of this CIT and this summit, I would say that is almost 2 decades ago that I met a colleague at Empire State College who encouraged me to get to the online. And then at Old Westbury, I did not have any online courses, and I didn't want to do that because I felt that the student mission will be somehow challenged by having it online and not having me present. But I realized that there are times that I could have do better. I could have put my content better, especially and let them discuss without knowing that I'm present, or so that somehow I was able to bridge the gap that it was on face-to-face when I was starting teaching online. So I started to do early feedback, and I happened that one of my presentation at CIT, and even I was lucky to publish it on JETS, and plus I believe it's 215. And it was early feedback, how early feedback impact on my teaching and learning, and whether it's going to be a good way of doing it. And I found that although everybody liked that early feedback, a student asked questions, you should really answer them right away, but they were in the discussion. I found that having answered it right away, it was the other way that I didn't want to happen, and nobody else was engaging. So this was some of the learning that I went through the instructor of teaching online courses. Then I said to myself, what else I should do to balance these, and what would be the drawback? And I found that discussion is important. This is how you know you're a student and a student know you. And that was my only way that I want to be there. The student know me, and I'm there. I didn't want them to be there so they know that I'm gonna judge them what they're writing or what they're feeling or what they're expressing. But however, I went and I increased the score of the final to 20 to 30% of going to discussion. Not to say saying hello and hi is going to get 35%, but telling them, yes, some of the work really can be done on discussion. And some of the writing can be in discussion. Some of the techniques can be in discussion. So I increased it to 20 to 35, depending on the courses that I was teaching. And then I start also to evaluate at the end rather than giving a feedback at every single. And if I gave the feedback, I always gave what they wrote. I pick up the best of what they wrote and put that this is what you wrote. And then would you expand it? Would you go to the book? Would you go to the chapter and bring me some of these? Yes, we know that this discussion that we have, a lot of students don't like to do that, especially when they want to write more and the only tools that they have is their phone, and their use of a PC becoming less and less. Obviously, use of other medium like camera, voice, and some other that create fun, and use of like techniques that they use it in the Twitters and Facebooks and discussion make it more attractive. So we're talking about, again, how we can enforce these rules, how we can make them to get engaged. And obviously having, if I don't want to be present most of the time, and we don't as a teacher, we don't have the same way that the student have no time, we teach more than what we can. So I decided to go with the monitor, ask a student in module 2 of my class, if anybody interested to help a student with the questions and answers and spend more time. And that also helped because sometimes a student felt that they can talk to the peer better than if they can talk to the teacher. So having a little monitors and having time with the monitors also instructed, that helped the course to go to a better to the end. So I want to end it here that how would I assess this? And I want to say that sometimes I see at the beginning of discussion, I have like 7 discussions through the 15 weeks, and I see that not much. And then I can see that the quality is changing, the quantity is changing. I think this is my way to assess the effectiveness of my teaching on the discussion. And I think this is, I would like to see it better. I want to see from my peers, and also I wanted to make sure that what I'm assessing is right. Thank you for listening to me.
Are there any questions?
Thank you, Ali.
Thank you.
John, you're good over there?
There are no questions in the chat.
Okay. So next up, we have Karen Caldwell from Potsdam on e-portfolios and for learning and development. Welcome, Karen.
Hi there. Thanks for the warm welcome. Can everybody hear me?
Yes.
Okay, great. And I'm hoping you can see my screen.
Yes.
Okay, excellent. So hi, everybody. I'm Karen Caldwell, and I work at SUNY Potsdam. And I'd like to share my own learning journey and my instructional journey with e-portfolios for both learning and development. And I'll share that information through 3 questions: what, so what, and now what? So I'll begin with an example, but before I do, I just want to share that throughout the presentation, I'm providing links to the resources through QR codes. And at the very end, I have a QR code that will take you to my handout itself. So if you just want to, if you prefer to just pay attention, then you'll have the QR code at the end with the slides. So beginning with what, e-portfolios begin with a purpose and a strategy, and the purpose can be learning, career development, or simply making connections. And it can be, e-portfolios can be both analog or paper-based or digital. And any creative endeavor requires a strategy, and typically that involves thinking about your identity and the audience. So before I go further, I want to share with you the communication strategy that I have my students create. And this is a digital communication strategy from Renee Hobbs in her amazing book, Create to Learn. And I just want to focus on the first 2 questions. So once my students have established their purpose for creating an e-portfolio, they then determine who they're going to be represented, or who they're going to represent in that e-portfolio. And by that, I mean, what's their digital online identity? And I encourage them to think about their professional aspirations, whether they're using the e-portfolio for learning or not. The hope is that they'll share the e-portfolio, and initially that tends to be for employment purposes. And that then becomes their target audience. But I really do leave it up to the students. So here's an example from Jill Benedict, one of my students who is an Indigenous student who was in my leadership class. So you can see in her e-portfolio, she has one tab where she's able to highlight her leadership competencies. She also has a tab where she highlights her competencies in research. And this e-portfolio, she has really taken ownership of it, both with the image itself, which represents some of her identity, and her professional identity in tribal gaming. So before I move on, I just want to define what e-portfolios are and are not. And really, they're a strategic curation based on a purpose and audience, and that can also lead to evidence of achievement. And in my case, it's achievement of course learning outcomes, but I really leave it to students to add to their e-portfolios as they like. So they are driven by students. They end up being collaborative throughout the 15-week semester, and they're scaffolded heavily by me with lots of examples and little mini kind of just-in-time workshops as needed. And I also want to emphasize that you and I can use these activities in in-person classes as well as online classes, because they really do involve a process and product that can be both analog and digital. E-portfolios in my class are not a project for building a website or an ebook. That's not the main point. The point really is this strategic curation of evidence of their achievement. And many students resist it initially by saying that they're not artistic or creative, but it really isn't about that. It also is not a replacement for any other form of assignment that gives evidence of student learning. And again, it's not only for online courses. So e-portfolios, the way that I use them are based on 2 main frameworks, one being digital literacy and the other deep learning. And digital literacy, I want to define, again, using Renee Hobbs's work, as the ability to access, analyze, create, reflect on, and take action using quite a variety of tools for a variety of purposes. And again, these processes usually start in an analog way. And the learning theory behind this that it captures it best is generative learning, which involves this iterative ongoing process of selecting content, organizing the content by making sense of it, and then integrating it into your long-term memory by doing something creative and by collaborating with others. So that selection process in class begins with students identifying content that's important to them. They then make sense of it and organize it, and that includes getting rid of or pruning content that's not important to them and their purpose. They then create various products such as infographics, blogs, videos, etc., as a way to integrate their learning and to synthesize the content. So as an example, in my class currently, the ePortfolio takes up 30% of their grade, and they engage in developing the ePortfolio through learning activities throughout the course in the discussion forums. They share their sketches, their understanding, and over time they share their products and get feedback from one another, and quite often they collaborate. So on paper, that looks like the course learning outcomes that are achieved through this assignment typically involve these verbs of defining and explaining course concepts and also communicating strategically. And a typical set of assignments, again, are a process-based approach where they share their plan, where they articulate their purpose for creating the ePortfolio, and they share their communication strategy. And then they build on that throughout by creating a prototype initially and engaging in peer critique, and then pulling it all together with a final product. So I scaffold the learners by sharing my own messy process. And in this case, my messy process always starts with note-taking. And I show this kind of messy set of notes that indicate that I've returned to it over time. And you can see that through the different colors of ink. I use sketches and different kind of word diagrams to identify connections within the content. And I emphasize to my students that I kept coming back to this. This didn't just happen overnight, but I had to keep coming back to it. And so those notes then became, once I decided on a purpose, which was to create an infographic, I took those same notes and created another set of notes where I still needed to work out the meaning on paper. And that became an infographic. This is part of an infographic I created related to adult learning theory. Another example that can be included in an ePortfolio is a video. And I outlined a video that I initially started as part of a presentation to my colleagues on campus. And again, it starts out with this analog selecting content that's important to me, organizing it and identifying those relationships, and then finally creating the presentation, which for me ended up being a TEDx talk. And I share this with students again, and share also how terrified I was in sharing my public artifact. One last example that I
Erin,
use.
Can I
Yes.
interrupt you here? We're just about at time. Do you have one last thought you want to share with us?
Yes. Yeah, I do.
Thank you.
Let me go back to the presentation. And I'll just share the why that I think is super important. And that is that I find that ePortfolios are really a bridge between the two worlds that we kind of need to think about as higher education professionals. And this quote comes from Arthur Levine in his book, The Great Upheaval. And he points out that higher education is most successful when it has one foot in the library and one foot in the street. And I feel that ePortfolios help students with that bridging. And I'll leave that there. And there is a link to the slides themselves. And you'll see other examples throughout, including the references if you are interested.
Thank you, Karen.
Sorry I took so much time.
That's okay.
Very much, Karen. Do we have any?
And there are no questions in the chat.
Okay. I'm still mulling over that quote you left us with, so thank you for that. The next two are, we have two separate submissions from Canton from the Center for Learning, Design, Innovation, and Online Instruction. So I'm not quite sure who over there is going first. Would that be you, Ben?
Yes, that's me.
Okay, great.
All right, so good afternoon, everybody. My name is Ben Rodden. I am an instructional designer with SUNY Canton's Center for Learning Design, Innovation, and Online Instruction. To give you some background, during our migration from Blackboard to Brightspace, several members of our faculty were very interested in seeing examples of how courses could look in Brightspace with a little cleaning up and reorganization of the materials. The instructional design team, we got to work and identified 3 courses from instructors that we had worked with both during the migration and in the past. The courses, they were selected based on a few criteria: their adaptation to Brightspace, their adherence to best practices in instructional design, copyright, accessibility, a variety of content and learning activities, and level of learner engagement. In each of the courses, we introduced the course and the instructor. We thanked them for sharing their work with their fellow faculty, and we wrote out a brief summary of why the courses were considered exemplary. With approval from our 3 instructors, the courses were polished up and they were made available and self-enrollable to instructors through the Discover tool in Brightspace. To showcase other features of the platform and to increase visibility of these exemplary courses, we created a custom widget on our institutional landing page that we titled Need Inspiration. Matt Nichols, our instructional technologist, he will now go over the widget. Matt, all yours.
Hi, everybody. I'm Matt Nichols from the Center for Learning Design, Innovation, Online Instruction. And to piggyback off what Karen said, I'm going to put one foot in the road, and I'm going to talk about starting with why and about that Discover tool. So the Discover tool is great, but sometimes we don't expect faculty members to open up Discover to just go look around and find courses. There's typically a purpose for that, or we want to put it where there is a purpose for them to locate the courses in the Discover tool. So I'm going to share my screen real quick. And I'm going to talk about how we implemented the widget and what the faculty members see. So the very first thing we did is we have a Brightspace student orientation, and on our nav bar, that orientation is hosted in Discover, so it's self-enrollable. But on the nav bar, what we did is we put the Brightspace student orientation within the dropdown. So if students need help, so they're starting with why or what they want help, they would go find that self-enrollable course in the dropdown for help in the nav bar. Well, we wanted to kind of do the same thing for faculty members. They may not know that or they may not know what they want. They might not just open up that Discover tool and go looking. Instead, we created a widget and called it Need Inspiration. There's the why. Why would you want to locate these courses? Well, if you need inspiration. So right now I'm administrator level, and in this browser, you'll see that when I scroll down, we have a lot of information on our front page, but this one that's labeled Need Inspiration has the links to these courses. And these courses, you may not be able to see this and I can't zoom in, but each one of these links on the bottom left-hand side goes to the Discovery hyperlink for the Discovery tool. So these courses are actually available in Discover if you want to go the long way around. If you click on Discover, you can find the courses located in here right now. You'll only see the updated, but it's a little clunky to search through some of this. When you browse the content, there's certain courses I'm already enrolled in, and there's a sort filter. So I have to look at what I'm already enrolled in. So we wanted to approach this from an ease of use perspective and the rationale for why they would want to go Discover. So here's our Needs Inspiration widget, and you'll see that when I hover over it, it has a menorah and it shows release conditions. So we didn't want to make this available for students. So I'm going to go up and look at my campus administration panel and look and show you quickly how we created this widget. So in our campus administration, and a couple things to look out for as well, you'll find the widgets tool. And in that widget tool, you can simply create a widget. We've already done this, and towards the bottom, you'll see, here's our Brightspace widget, and I'm going to click the pencil to edit that. And I'm going to show you through these 3 tabs. Now, another thing in Brightspace, when you're switching between tabs, be careful because things auto-save. So from the left to the right, let's look at the Properties tab. We titled it Need Inspiration, and we did not put in a replacement string. So in order to make it more customized, you can use a first name replacement string, and it will appear as though it says their first name. Hey, Matt, need inspiration. The thing is, when you demo this as an actual instructor, an error popped up. Another thing, when you have hyperlinks inside of the widget, if you don't have the widget security for sandbox disabled, you'll get a error and the information will not process or load on the screen. So we had to work with our DLE admin to enable this widget security to actually be able to disable the widget sandboxed. Next tab over, release conditions, and watch, you'll see a pop-up for save successfully, although I didn't save anything. So if you do make changes and you want to revert those changes, make sure you click cancel. Here's where we added the release conditions for any condition must be met. And we have our Canton instructors. So as long as an instructor, or as long as an individual is enrolled in a course with the instructor role, a non-cascading role, they will be able to see this widget. And also for us as administrators cascading from the top down, we also need to be able to see that. So we added both those roles for any condition must be met. And finally,
Matt,
sorry?
we have just about a minute left if you want to share
Okay.
one last thought.
Okay, in content, this is where we added the links, and the hyperlinks link directly to those courses. I'm going to show you really quickly, hopefully as a demo instructor, how they self-enroll. Here's the instructor. There is no Menorah. They see the widget. I'm going to click on our TCOM course, and here's where it goes to the discovery tool, and the instructor can simply enroll in the course to see the model of material. And I'm all set for the exemplary course.
Thank you, Matt.
Thank
And there
you.
are no questions in the chat.
Alrighty, thanks.
Okay. Thanks, John, for keeping us all on track. I appreciate you. Great overview, Matt and Ben. Thank you. And then I know Canton is going to be sharing their Oscar certification program. And who will that be? Allison?
That will be me. Yep.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Okay. Yeah, no problem. So hi, everyone. My name is Allison Bond. My glasses are going to be crooked because they're broken. But my name is Allison Bond, and I'm the senior instructional designer with SUNY Canton CLDIOI. I won't make you listen to the whole name again. But today I'm going to do a quick overview of our effective practice, which is the SUNY Canton Oscar certification program. So SUNY Canton has had an online course review process for several years, where all online courses are reviewed and evaluated against the 50 standards of the Oscar rubric. So due to this review process, we kind of discovered a need for a more like in-depth training of the Oscar standards. And just as like a side note, we have an edited version of the rubric that best fits the needs of our campus. We took the standard Oscar rubric and we edited some things on it to best fit our needs. And then we saw that throughout the review process, many courses were not passing the review on the first or even second attempts. So we decided that a different approach was needed and kind of a standardization of ideas across what the standards mean. So we had to look at the rubric from 2 different perspectives. We had to look at the rubric from the perspective of an instructor or a course builder. And then we also had to look at the rubric from the perspective of someone that is reviewing courses. So we had to make sure that it was understood in both ways. So it was very important to the process that we sort of got everyone on the same page about the standards. And although we do have our Oscar rubric, our version of the Oscar rubric publicly posted on our website, our instructors kind of needed sort of like a translation and practical tips. So in order to do this, CLDIOI and the Online Learning Committee teamed up and created and hosted this Oscar certification program. So this included 12 live webinars, and 6 were held during the day, and the same 6 were held at night to ensure availability for adjuncts and such, people with busy schedules during the day. And we also provided recordings of all of our sessions in a corresponding online shell in case someone was unable to attend. And this additionally allowed for our participants to be able to listen back through recordings while taking the quizzes, which I will talk about, while developing their courses, or even while reviewing other courses. If they're going through reviewing a course and they see a standard that they're not sure on, or if they're creating a course and are not sure that a standard is met, they can look back through with this recording and they can go back through the information in the shell. So we quite literally walked through each of the 50 standards with the attendees from the viewpoint of the reviewer and the instructor. We showed them what each standard means, and we showed them how to address each standard. And we had PowerPoints for all of our live sessions and everything. And we made sure that all PowerPoints, all recordings, everything was uploaded into that corresponding online shell, so then they could have access to it whenever. So in order to actually complete the certification, faculty had to attend 6 sessions or watch recordings and complete a quiz in the online shell for each of the 6 sections. So we required each attendee to have a minimum of an 80% on each quiz, and we provided them with feedback throughout the quizzes, whether it be just automatic feedback or other feedback that we had for them. And once the, so we also had unlimited attempts. I wanted to note that we had unlimited attempts because we encouraged them to look back through the rubric and recordings to find any answers that they might have missed. And once they attended the webinars and completed all of the quizzes, they were given a certificate of completion, and they're featured on our website. We have a nice little a document that shows all of our instructors that have completed it and lets us know like what school they're from and contact information and such. Yeah, and so we had really great success with this certification program, and it really spurred on a lot of good conversations about accessibility and the meanings and ideals behind the standards in the OSCAR rubric. And it also helped us to synchronize our ideas about quality course design on campus, from course builders to instructional designers to course reviewers. This program definitely heightened and highlighted the importance of OSCAR standards and the role that they play in online course development. So for this, we had a really awesome and very inquisitive group of faculty members. And we had representation of faculty from all 3 of SUNY Canton schools to complete the program. And having participants from 3 schools was super interesting because you could see how to apply OSCAR across many disciplines. But yeah, that is my summary of our OSCAR certification program, and I'm happy to take any questions.
Allison, thank you. There is one question in the chat, and if you could answer that in the chat so we could move along, we are running short on time.
Have faculty been willing to go along with this, or did they resist doing this training? I think it's kind of.
If you could just chat back to that.
Okay, got it. Yep, I'll just answer in the chat.
Thank you. And
thanks.
Rachel, I believe you're up next.
Okay, thank you. And let's see if I can, I don't know if I can share my screen or not. It's not letting me share my PowerPoint for some reason. Okay. So I guess I'll just talk about what I've been doing, and I won't share my PowerPoint. And I will turn on my video. That would be helpful. For some reason, my PowerPoint isn't working. I have been using Panopto to provide video feedback to students, and it's nothing terribly innovative, except for the fact that students really love it, because what I do is I bring up on the screen their essay, and I maybe left some comments on the essay, and then I do a screencast recording of the essay. I scroll through the essay. Sometimes I will put my little head, will appear, and students both in synchronous online, asynchronous, and seated classes have responded so enthusiastically. In fact, I brought it into my seated classes. Originally, it had just been for asynchronous students because I was really focused on that, instructor presence. Obviously, in asynchronous courses is so important to feel that the instructor is there. The students have just been I've been doing this for 2 or 3 years. They're just blown away by it. They love it. One of the big things that they talk about is tone of voice, as I'm doing right now. And I can sound really excited about a particular passage of an essay. And so I will continue to do this. I think that from the research that I've been kind of delving into a little bit about this type of feedback, that the video portion of it with the actual essay on the screen is really superior to just audio comments, right? And it's superior to written only comments because I literally can walk students through a piece of writing. So what I'm asked about a lot is, how long does this take? And it really depends, right, on how long a piece of text is. And if it's at a draft stage, you know, it might be that I wind up recording a video that, I mean, at the outside, my videos are about 8 minutes long. So that means that I probably spend about 20 minutes really going over a paper. So it's about the same amount of time that one might spend with, let's say, a 5 or 6 page paper if you were just writing comments. And I find that it clears up questions more easily. I have so few questions. So anyway, it's not as I say, terribly innovative, but it works so well with Panopto. I would caution you about the Brightspace video feature. To me, not as solid. If you've got Panopto or Screen, Usia, you know, incorporate it into Brightspace, it will then pop right up into their grade book. And they can see that little video there and click. So anyway, so I don't have my beautiful PowerPoint with all my results from my SEIs, but I'm just so enthusiastic about this. And that's all I have to say.
Thank you, Rachel. There are no questions for you in the chat. There are some responses to your questions, though.
Thank you, Rachel. You are more than welcome to send me your PowerPoint because I'll put everybody's together in this presentation for Alex to post on the website. So we can still get folks that information. Okay, thanks so much. All right, so now I'm going to call Brandon Murphy up to the podium. We have an in-person presenter. So Brandon, we have the mic on and everything. So we'll just go to we'll share. And this is the only part you have to share, right?
Yeah.
Here you go.
Joined actually online.
Oh, that's right. You have
Yes. So it's going to be a little bit of a split presentation, but good afternoon, everybody. My name is Brandon Murphy. I'm the coordinator of the Teaching and Learning Center at the SUNY College of Environmental Science and Forestry here in Syracuse. If you're not familiar with the college, we're a small doctoral granting institution. And what I'm going to talk to you about today is a student support program that we launched. So ESF in 2019 launched our online bachelor's completion degree in sustainability management. It was the first online undergraduate degree for our college, and it remains the only one at the college that was developed in part through conversations with alumni who are working in the field of sustainability. And it also came out of the SUNY Enrollment Roundtable process, is identified as both a need, emerging jobs, as well as sort of a lack of competition in the space. And so since we've launched it in 2019, we currently are the largest transfer program, just about the largest transfer population on campus, and quickly came up to speed that we're sort of running at our current capacity of students. And so one of the things that we struggled with a little bit was trying to change the campus culture from a very campus-centered, especially at the undergrad level, campus-centered philosophy around campus of trying to support these online students in the degree program beyond just simply creating spaces for them to participate remotely. And so this webinar series was one of the ways we were trying to do that. And Kathy, if you're there, I will turn it over to you to talk about the program itself, or this webinar series itself.
Oh, I'm here. Okay, I am here. Does that work?
I'm going to stop the screen share just so we can see you here. There we go.
All right. Good afternoon. Thank you, Brandon. And
You just muted yourself. We still can't hear you, Kathy.
Did you mute your headset accidentally? You're unmuted in Zoom.
Sorry.
We can hear you.
Okay. Thank you, everyone. I apologize for that, but I did just put the YouTube playlist in the chat, so hopefully folks can see that. I work with Brandon at ESF's Open Academy as part of our online ed team, and specifically with our bachelor's degree, Brandon mentioned, as academic advisor to students enrolled in the degree and program coordinator. So this practice for today, which is the professionals in the discipline, or in our case, sustainability webinar series, came about for a few reasons. As Brandon mentioned, being our first dedicated online degree at the college, there was value in creating this as an online first series. So while faculty, students, and staff from anywhere within the college are welcome to attend, we wanted to be sure the invitation and ongoing series recognize our program as online to our majority residential college. And we also wanted to explore with students and career services, another partner in this series, this relatively new field of sustainability management, and to hear directly from practitioners what their work life is like, how their academic backgrounds did or didn't prepare them for their jobs, and even provide input into what they feel are critical skills for the discipline. As well, we wanted to make connections with career services for networking opportunities. So we worked with our Office of Sustainability and Career Services to identify speakers, along with student suggestions. And we plan to include alum from our major eventually as speakers too. So we've had about 10 events with 1 to 3 webinars per semesters. We've had speakers from a variety of positions, private, public. We've had over 100 attendees, and roughly a quarter of our sustainability management students have attended a session. And I just real quickly, because I know we're ending, did have an exciting tweak to this this fall, in that one of our students in New York City wanted to have a networking event. And so we worked out hosting a hybrid professionals in sustainability session, where we were based out of the SUNY Welcome Center in New York, and had students, our online students, attend, some that were in the metro region, but also broadcasted out to an audience virtually. So it was just a great opportunity to learn from a professional. We had someone from Sustainable Community Solutions speak, but then also for our students to meet each other in real life. And then we worked with admissions to host it. So we opened it up to prospective and transfer advisors too. So it's been a learning experience, but it's definitely been a way to put our students front and center on our Syracuse campus calendar, but linking in with programming college-wide.
Thank you.
So, thank you. These have been fantastic to listen to. I appreciate hearing from everyone.
Erin?
You can find the professional sustainability webinar series on YouTube. And the only other thing I would add to this, in addition to serving our students, this also actually serves as a recruiting tool into the program. As we put these up, we also sort of direct students, or direct people who are interested in these different professions back to the potential for the degree program.
That's great. Thank you for sharing that resource too, Brandon. Thanks. All right. Thank you. So let me pull up the closing slides where we get to get into the awards. Here we go. So we are all the way down here. There we go. So I just wanted to mention before we actually confer the awards that we have a partnership in collaboration with the University of Central Florida. They produce the Teaching Online Pedagogical Repository, and this is an international repository. And we encourage anyone who submits to our effective practices to also submit to Topper. They align with our program, and so they are currently accepting applications. I think it's actually through next week, accepting submissions. And we have a number of SUNY effective practices that have been accepted into Topper. So if you go to that website and you search SUNY, you'll get to see all of those that are there. So it's just another level of recognition that we can extend to everyone who participates in our program. And there's the link to our repository on our website. The short link, the bit.ly, is just EP Awards 2023. So that's a quicker way to remember. I should have put the bit.ly on here. But this is the part where this is the part where it's showing me all the things I didn't want it to show, but that's okay. You're going to see everybody. Here we go. So we'll just go down the list, but Brandon is here and Kathy, and you have Luann also. Is that, who is your third person? John. That's right. So John and Kathy and Brandon, you for the community voting, you came in third place with 50 points. I should say that there were 365 cumulative points all around. This is on a 5-star rating scale. So if you get 5 stars, it's 5 points, and then it's, times number of entries and so forth. So you can see that when you go to look at the entries, you can see their reviews at the bottom. So Brandon, actually, can you come up and I can give you your award? So this team earned the third place award. Thank you so much. All right, and then Karen, you are online. I hope you are still there and can hear. You earned the second place award with 55 points for your e-portfolios. So thank you, Karen. We should give her a round of applause. She can hear us. And this doesn't often happen, but we often will have a tie for third place, but not often for second place. So the SUNY Canton Oscar certification program also earned 55 points. So the entire learning, design, innovation, and online instruction team, congratulations on that. So give them a round of applause. If you can't see it online, we have your awards here and they will be sent to you. And then first place is Making It Real, the integrating immersive VR across that UB Doctorals of Social Work program that Steve shared with us. So congratulations to Steve and your team at UB. You earned 103 points. So that was an excellent rating that you received. So thanks so much. All right, and that actually concludes the effective practice presentations. I'm so grateful that all of our speakers could join us and be present to share all of the great work that you're doing. Thanks so much. Alex, I'll turn it over to you. I'll leave it unmuted. Okay.
All right, thanks. Oh, we're going to take like a quick 5-minute break so we can set up for the next, the panel, which is our panel using AI to improve online learner writing and instructor effectiveness. So can I call the panelists up and we can set you up with your